have somebody paid that's head gardener.
Uh-huh.
But it depends. I mean, if it's a private garden, it's one thing,
On the public side,
on the public side, no, there's usually a paid head gardener. But the use of volunteers that goes a lot of ways. I mean, I think you guys in Phoenix do it at a higher level than most places. A lot of places really volunteers are just for the pulling weeds and cleaning, and that's the most important thing. Is just to have some people there.
Yeah.
You need some sort of director or kind of. I don't think curator is really the best word. I mean, there's different ways. I mean, there's guys that just tell you what to do. Yeah. And then there's some guys that tell you what to do and then show you how to do it. I mean, I'm like that guy.
But the role of the curator, I mean, what have you seen here in the U.S.? I mean, but this is a typical figure of America, the curator.
Yeah, and I don't think that's really the best word for it. Yeah, I mean, I think in question number 2, gardens run by volunteers. How are day-to-day decisions? There's got to be somebody that sort of creates the maintenance calendar, keeps the daily journal of what's actually happening, so that we know how long things take, when they're done, what's effective, what's not effective.
We're trying to do it by committee, and the committee puts together a plan, but I think we are not very satisfied with that approach. Because committees,
there's very little accountability in that, exactly. Because nobody's paid here, and they have no real responsibility. They're volunteers, so organized training sessions. I mean, that's starting to happen. There's 2 ways you can do it. I mean, you can do it. You can do it with guys from Japan and help you train, but they don't understand a lot of times the dynamics of your climate, which happened. I know with you guys. Yeah. With over pruning, and having plants not respond the way they would in Japan, or you can use people from here that are trained in Japan and are familiar with the aesthetic, maybe a little better familiar history.
But they're usually done in the format we're gonna have tomorrow. I mean, and you working the workshop style.
Sure, could be. But it takes time, especially with the pine training, like I was saying. You just got to do it, and you have to train your muscles to do it, and it needs to become a very fluid, rhythmic sort of thing, and then also everybody needs to be doing the same thing so that so it's not like bonsai where we sort of respect the styling of a tree, they're all working, they're all together.
Say 2 words about this. Everybody needs to be doing it the same way.
Well, I think uniquely in your case, it would be that you would work on trees together. Everybody in the maintenance of a tree, it's like cutting grass.
Yeah.
Everybody can push a lawnmower. Everybody that's pruning on the tree should be able to prune together and do it essentially the same way.
As a team.
Yes, as a team, so that the result in the end is so that goes into 3. I think organized training is good, but then there's going to be a certain level of people working together and learning how to do it more efficiently.
Because today at the beginning of your talk, you made a comment that fundamentally your purpose is to make sure that the skill level is maintained and people are developed. That's the guarantee of permanence of these gardens in the United States.
Yeah, so number 4, we're definitely trying to, especially Phoenix is really well-designed garden, and it requires this sort of maintenance to keep it at that high level. So scale is going to be of the size of the trees is really important. And then I think with the different types of trees, it's not, like I said, about making them all specimen type trees. Some trees are just supporting members to the other trees, so you have to, know. But they still need to be worked on too, so that they don't just grow unkempt and get too big. And when trees get really, it would be rare to see really big giant trees in a garden in Japan. It just doesn't happen.
On the 5, I mean, kind of a the 5.1 is self-explanatory, because that's what we're doing tomorrow.
I think especially with the pines, I mean, essentially it's all the same, but we change it a little bit with the change in the species and look for some aspects of the different trees. Hopefully I can do that tomorrow because there's some red pines there, which you would be able to impart slightly to Aleppo pine. So maybe make Aleppo pine more like red pine. We can impart masculinity and femininity into pine trees, where typically, we see them here in America as very masculine trees.
On this issue of controlling the height of the super tall trees, basically just trimming the straight branches.
And try and cut back to laterals, and it's difficult, once they get to 30 or 40 feet tall, you got to go up there to do it.
We have been able to get some of the city money to bring the arborists
to work on the ficus trees. Ficus are the worst.
We have done that, and but it still is not enough. I mean, 1 year later, everything is back again.
Yeah, right.
Or the fertilization.
It really depends on the tree. I think the best thing to do with fertilization is not so much heavy amounts of fertilizer, but be aware of the plant health and provide sort of the micronutrient aspect that gets a little bit overlooked by heavy, bad water, things like that.
We saw a big bald eagle.
Bamboo, kind of a tough one. But I like it, just because we can make stuff.
And introduce your name then.
I'm Brent Moon from the City of Houston Parks Department.
So, Brent, thank you very much. But the first question is, in your garden, you have a paid, trained director, or they run by non-professional volunteers?
We have professional horticulturists. I'm a horticulturist. I manage all of the horticulture operations in Herman Park, and then our Japanese garden is within Herman Park. It's about a 6-acre garden, and I have 2 full-time city employees that work directly under me. And so we manage the garden together, make the decisions together. Me and Kathy, whom you met before, she's a horticulturist. She's in there every single day, and then she has a gardener that works alongside of her. And so they do everything in there from cutting the turf to manicuring all the plants. There's restrooms in there, so they have to go through in the morning, clean the restrooms, get it ready for the public, go through, empty the trash can. So we do all of that kind of stuff.
Cool. In the case of gardens run by volunteers or using volunteers, how are the day-to-day decisions made for plant care?
Well, all day-to-day decisions on plant care are made by myself and Kathy, the horticulturist there. And so then when we get volunteers, we don't have a lot, but when we do get them, they always check in with her, and then she gives them their assignments, and they either work alongside of her, or if they're simply weeding, she might take them to the bed and explain to them what she needs them to weed. Thinning bamboo, she'll show them how to do that, make sure they understand how to do it, make sure they're comfortable with doing it, and then they'll work on that task.
Well, partially you have answered the next question, but do you have training sessions for the volunteers?
We do. Sometimes we'll do just quick training with them. If it's something more in depth, we make sure they've worked alongside of us several times to do it. Like for instance, on our Japanese black pines, really we haven't let any of our volunteers work on that too much because it's very tedious. It's something you really have to understand before you just jump in and start doing it, so you don't mess the tree up. But when we've had our team from Japan come several times, they've had several intensive study sessions where not only my staff have worked, but several volunteers have come.
Would you say a few words about these intensive sessions? How do you organize? I mean, what did they do with your volunteers and with your people?
Well, when our team from Japan comes, they basically just gather everyone around, and the team from Japan, they speak a little English, not a lot, so we have a Japanese-American fellow who comes and volunteers with us, so he does a lot of our translation, and they just learn by doing. They watch the two guys from Japan who come and work with us, and they see how the needles are thinned and removed and how the candling process is done, depending on what time of year it is.
Okay.
So they basically just learn by doing.
It's one-on-one. It's kind of a mentoring, right, on
Right.
hands-on.
Right, and we need to do more of it. We need to build our volunteer base.
The last one is that does the staff try to honor the intent of the design of the Japanese garden when replacing plants that did not thrive?
We do, and if we don't replace, let's say a boxwood died because for some reason it didn't do well there, it could have just been, an anomaly, maybe that plant died, or if we do determine, hey, that plant's just not suited for our climate or this area, then we'll find a suitable substitute. And there's been a lot of that's had to happen because, our garden opened to the public in 1992, I believe, and so, it's just gone through its we just had our 20-year anniversary recently, and so, over the years there have been plants that were selected there that weren't suited to
But you have the original plans. You have
we do have the original plans, and we have the original writings of Mr. Nakajima, who designed the garden, and then we've been working with a team out of Japan, and they've tried to honor a lot of his original design, but there have been a few things that have changed over the year.
And the last, just a side question, who does the pruning of the different types of trees?
Mostly my two horticulturists.
They handle all
horticulture
kinds,
and gardening,
yeah.
yes. And we have, like I said, volunteers do some things, but we're very choosy about who we let prune stuff. I'm in there some. I mostly am in management now, but I still find time occasionally to go in there and help do some of the pruning. But most of it's done by my two full-time employees in there.
So you did some of the pruning yourself?
Occasionally, not as much as I used to, because when I first started, I was an on-the-ground horticulturist, and so I was in the garden all the time. And I'm a superintendent now over the whole horticulture program.
Where did you get your skills on pruning?
Well, I worked at Missouri Botanical Garden for 5.5 years before I moved to Houston, and so I learned a lot of my pruning skills there. And I didn't work in the Japanese garden in St. Louis, but I was good friends with one of the guys who was. So I went to him a couple times, and I felt like I was a little weak on my pruning skills. So I asked him, hey, could you sort of give me some pointers? And so he showed me a lot, and then I've just learned a lot working with our team from Japan as well.
Very good. Thanks so much, Brent.
No problem.
Thank you very much.